A little bit earlier that we have sister stations throughout the country, other Tegna stations, and we're going to dip into one right now and find out more about what's going on in Ohio. Let's listen in.
A pretty significant margin, not yet been called at this point in time, but a margin that is very significant right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that when we were talking to Mark Namick before, he was, discussing how the numbers with issue 1, how they sort of correspond or how they're going to match up with Donald Trump in that race in the states, because they've really tried to connect, issue 1 with the Republican ticket.
Mm-hmm. And we know that issue 1 has been a confusing issue for a lot of people. So just a reminder, because I think there are still people who are sitting at home and they're thinking, I thought I voted one way. I'm not sure I voted the correct way. So a yes vote, which is at 45.5%, means that was a vote to change how our voting districts are drawn in Ohio by taking politicians out of the process. That no, which is winning and seems to have been more consistently winning tonight than the yes vote. The no vote just maintains the status quo as it is. Politicians are controlling what the voting districts look like and what those parameters are. But again, we are, I missed what the percentage was.
It was not, so you could see their no is 54.5.
Okay.
Yes.
And so you mentioned there with the presidential race, not too far off. Trump right now carrying about 55.9%. So very, very close numbers, as you would expect, I suppose, when you have a presidential race. That's what makes everything so different, because you bring in that factor where people are potentially just voting down ballot for the views of one party. So you have these corresponding pretty closely right now, but that factor that you bring in, Christy, is so important. That we heard people say that this was potentially confusing. I thought there was a good point that was brought earlier, and it is something that has been studied for a number of years, that when people find something new, in particular confusing, they often vote no. The idea behind it is that it's safer to just not have any change than potentially have a change that, if you don't understand it for your life, might wind up being bad.
Yeah, really interesting to look at the correlation there, especially because issue 1 was one of those issues that they, supporters behind it really tried to frame it as a bipartisan effort to try to turn it to a citizens commission that was going to be running with the mapping and drawing of the redistricting maps. Again, another look at them. The 59% of precincts reporting the no's there, 54.5% compared to 45.5% for yes.
So Jeff Rusnak, Democratic strategist, Jeff Rusnak is with us of our strategy group. Since we've sat down with you, I think
a lot more is coming.
A lot more has come through. You're seeing the numbers for issue 1. You're seeing the numbers for Sherrod Brown. Does anything surprise you tonight thus far? How are you feeling?
I think it's going to be a long night. I think it's there's still the urban counties are out. Cuyahoga County, the only votes that are in right now are the absentee votes. Franklin County is only at about 30% in. Hamilton County is at less than 10% in. So I still think it's going to be a long night for folks. On issue 1, I think, where the no side was effective is they turned the issue upside down. And they messed with the ballot language, and so people were confused, as was mentioned, and when people are confused, they tend to vote no. And so, they tried that last year with the reproductive rights issue in issue 1, but I think people saw through it and really understood a yes vote was to protect reproductive rights. I think the difference in this issue, this time with issue 1, was that people didn't know which side was to prevent gerrymandering and to really to let the citizens take control of the process. And when you flip the ballot language like that, it really, I think, confused a lot of folks. And I think exit polling is going to show that. We're going to see that over the next few days, how confused people were about that issue. And go ahead. Sorry.
Well, when you talk about, you're saying that opponents, they did a good job at sort of confusing voters. Does that mean that the other side, supporters behind issue 1, didn't do enough?
No, I think they gamed the system. And when you rig the system, they had control of the ballot language and the ballot language process. And, when you rig the system like that, and they were essentially the referees in that I don't think you can, you're going to get voters to kind of see through that and understand exactly what was going on there. And so, if you see, I think it looks like when you look at the results, it's really within, 1 or 2% of the presidential results in Ohio. If you look at it, it's basically tracking along the same lines as the presidential.
What do you think was the toughest fight for Democrats?
Toughest fight overall in Ohio?
Yeah.
I think it is. I think it's figuring out how to stop this divisive-ness and the politics of fear and hatred that exists out there, and how we combat that and show people that there is a difference, and we need to demonstrate effectively demonstrate what an opportunity means for people, and how the Democratic Party is a party of hope and opportunity instead of fear and divisiveness. And I think that until we really connect with people and let them see what it means to have an opportunity, whether it's an opportunity for a good job, opportunity to have health care, opportunity to succeed, to get an education, until people understand that, rather than worrying about this kind of divisive fear that seems to be kind of embedded right now out there. But if, I grew up in Youngstown, I look at Mahoning County, and Mahoning County right now, actually, everybody put a spotlight on it after the 2016 election and 2020 election. Right now, it's 55-45 for Harris. So something happened. There was some change that occurred there, and it could have been she advertised in the Youngstown TV market.
Alrighty, so there we are. Our sister station, WGRZ in Cleveland, is telling us that they are predicting Donald Trump as the winner in Ohio, which is what was expected.
And because it is also the home of J.D. Vance, too.
Absolutely.